Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Manisha Gupta. Well, India's floating solar market is a sunshine sector undergoing rapid expansion. But the bigger opportunity lies in country's vast potential for floating solar capacity. Let's look at India's present capacity. Well, it stands at around 0.8 gigawatts, while the country has potential to reach 102 gigawatts. According to the National Institute of Solar Energy, this estimate is based on using just about 20% of surface area of eligible water bodies. So which states have the highest potential? Well, Maharashtra tops the list with a potential of 16.28 gigawatts, followed by Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Odisha, and then, of course, Telangana. What are the opportunities? Well, massive untapped reservoirs, higher energy yields, hydro-solar hybridization, and then reduced evaporation and zero land use conflict. The floating solar systems can generate 5 to 15% more electricity than traditional ground-mounted systems. But no opportunity comes without challenges, and these include higher capital expenditures, structural degradation risks, fluctuating water levels, and then, of course, ecosystem impacts and other challenges. Joining us to take this discussion forward is Sanjay Banga. He is CEO and MD with Tata Power Renewable Energy, and Neha Agarwal is Senior Vice President Corporate Strategy with Vikram Solar. Thank you so much for joining in. And it really is a sunshine sector. Mr. Banga, let me start with you first. Large-scale floating projects typically demand significant upfront capital for specialized anchoring and mooring systems. Would you say that the markets are just about becoming competitive now, or is this a segment that still requires government subsidies?
So, Manisha, if you see the typical cost of setting up a solar plant, it's around 3.5 to 4 crore per megawatt in a ground mounted, and it's 1 crore more for the floating solar as such. Now, with the new scheme which is announced by government is a very, very positive step in this direction. So this will make virtually the ground mounted solar and the floating solar cost virtually same. And this is how it will promote more and more floating solar projects in India. And it is good because this piece of water, which is whether it's a reservoir or it's a backwater, can be effectively used. And the floating solar, as you mentioned, has a higher efficiency because of the cooling water impact. And the surface which was unused, when it is used for the solar plant, the water evaporation is also less. So it's good for economy also and good for energy transition in that way.
Mr. Banga, with projects like Kayamkulam and Omkareshwar, how much of Tata Renewables energy future of 20 megawatts do you see coming in from this?
So this policy will really help all developers, not only Tata Power. Right now, we have around 200 megawatt out of our 7 gigawatt of portfolio. We already have taken around 2,500 acres of Ringoli Reservoir, where Odisha government wants to set up projects for floating solar. That will be adding to around 500 megawatt. And then how this scheme goes further, because as a developer, we will be bidding for more and more solar projects. And the good part with the floating solar is you don't have a land issue, you don't have ROW issues. The execution is virtually certain in case of floating solar rather than setting up a ground mounted solar. So we would be eagerly waiting for new announcement in this market for floating solar, and we would be very, very active.
Mr. Banga, I want to come back to the cost of this really, because one of your projects is brackish backwaters, the other is freshwater reservoir. So would you say that the engineering cost really varies when you look at various different environments, or would you say there's a standardized platform and there's not so much of a change that you have to do between two projects?
So if you see our two projects, one is in Omkareshwar, which has around 15 to 20 meters of depth of the water. So there the services that we have to do incur more capex cost. In the Kayamkulam, which we developed, a 100 megawatt project, there's hardly 2 and 3 meters of depth. So any floating solar projects, when we do a bathymetric study where we find what is the depth, how is the wave intensities, and the capex cost vary on that basis, whether it could be 25% more, it could be 35% more. So it depends on that. But the good part of this is still, I would say, the execution time is better as compared to the execution time if you don't have land and the transmission challenges you have in ground for the solar projects. But in terms of engineering as such, it's not very complicated. It, of course, the cost varies because of the depth, and sometimes when you have more waves, for example, in our Kayakulam projects, we don't have much wave, but we have a strong waves in Omkeswar because of the 20-meter depth. So you have to design your project on the basis of that. Sometimes you will have to have even wave barrier to avoid your infrastructure from that. But that escalation cost is not more than 5 to 10%.
That point is well taken. And what automated cleaning technologies or robotic solutions are you using to ensure that your operational costs are well within limits?
In fact, very surprising, Manisha, our operation cost in a ground-mounted solar project and the water floating solar project is not much different. Because in the ground-mounted solar projects, you have to have a security arrangements. Then there are other issues. Whereas in case of the floating solar, you don't have those security arrangements. So for that point of view, in fact, the cost is less. Further, the cleaning frequency in floating solar is less. The only issue is that the kind of skill set which are required for floating solar is slightly different. The persons who are working on floating solar needs a kind of a swimming and diving licenses also. But if you have a good mechanism of a condition-based monitoring, and then you are doing optimizing the frequency of maintenance on the basis of that, then I would say the operational cost for ground-mounted solar and the floating-mounted solar, the difference is not more than 10% as such.
And what would you say is your reliance on third-party or imported components for this?
So there are not many important components in this. You have the solar panels, which are same as you use for the ground-mounted solar projects also. And then on the beneath that, you have a kind of a floating surface which you develop. Those surfaces are normally developed, or floats are developed at the site itself by Indian manufacturer. Yes, if you have to have a wave barrier, then for a special kind of mooring arrangement, you have a ropes which are imported. But otherwise, most of the component, even in the designing and design consulting, is also easily available in India.
All right, Mr. Banga, that point is well taken. Let me take this conversation across now to Neha Agarwal, who joins us from Vikram Solar. Neha, hi, thank you so much for joining in. And as we were having a conversation that India has almost identified 102 gigawatts of that, but actual deployment is quite limited. What would you say are the major barriers that we're looking at in sense of scaling this in India?
Hi, Manisha, and thank you for that question. So just to initiate this, I'm sure we are all aware that Vikram Solar did the first ever floating plant in the country, which was back in 2015, while it was really small, a 10 kilowatt pilot project. And then we continued this journey. We have recently also done 80 megawatt for NTPC in Gujarat, and followed by a 20 megawatt currently for West Bengal Power Development Corporation. So I think, yes, the market was there and we were evaluating, we were doing a lot of technology upgradations. As far as module technology is concerned, it requires the certification around salt and mist and, specialized frames and junction boxes, which we are ready with. However, like even Sanjay mentioned, the cost is a little high. But now with this initiative by our Honorable Prime Minister with 1 crore per megawatt, subsidy announcement, I think it is here to stay, and it will help manage the costs equivalent to ground mount. Also push a lot of tenders because this will come through SECI. So we are expecting these tenders to come with standard terms, and now this is going to pick up. India is surrounded beautifully with a lot of water, while at the same time, it's also quite challenging with the land availability for ground mount. So this is definitely going to pick up from here on.
Neha, also, when we look at the overall technology, how do you see floating solar evolving alongside, let's say, battery storage or hybrid renewable systems? And would you say that it does become an important solution when you talk about India's reliable, round-the-clock renewable power therein?
Absolutely. So module along with battery is the best combination for floating solar because it will help round the clock energy availability. And with us, setting up our module capacity along with battery storage also, we'll be offering a bundled product to all our developers. We are there in terms of module certification and battery also. We are setting up our new facility, and combined combination will help round the clock energy availability and assurance. So that will help scale this up. For other products, to take care of safety, there are a lot of technology upgradations in terms of cable trays so that they don't come in contact with the water, and other safety measures are important for this to scale up, in which, we are working towards technology upgradation there as well.
So Neha, what would you say on how do we see this segment growing commercially, commercial readiness that is, and bigger utility scale floating? How would you look at the wins therein, the orders therein, and what is the sense that Vikram Solar is now looking at in this space going ahead?
So, of course, in order to scale this up till now, while each reservoir, each water body was engineered differently, given the climatic conditions and the water conditions, the wave, etc., basis these studies that were done. However, the potential which has been now come forward by NICE of almost 102 gigawatts, I think it will need some sort of standardization in the product, product bundling, which we are working on. And with this, and with SECI taking up tenders to, get to the market announced by our Prime Minister, the standardization will help scale this up quite fast. And we are working with developers who are planning to bid for these projects so that we have arrangements with them so that our modules can be well placed towards this market.
A final question to you, Mr. Banga, and well, there are some narratives as well being set out on how floating solar perhaps is blocking sunlight, affecting aquatic ecosystems, local fishing communities perhaps. How are you reacting to all of that?
Manisha, whatever I know, it's more a kind of a narrative which is generated by few not to have floating solar plants, but most of the reports which I have read is it helps in terms of less evaporation of water. So it's good for that point of view. And of course, when this report has come to set up 102 gigawatt by NICE, it has considered all those factors, and that is why the government is promoting it. So there is not much substance in such kind of reports as such.
All right, that point is well taken. Mr. Banga, Neha, thank you as always for joining in and making very clear to our viewers on what floating solar panels is all about. The technology clearly seems to be growing. The upside or the possibilities clearly are limitless, and the company is working on that as well. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it today on CNBC TV 18. But with that, we'll go for a short break. When we come back, we will be joined by Australian mining giant BHP, which has reported strong FY 2026 driven by copper and rising commodity prices. We discuss this with the company's Chief Commercial Officer, Ragnar Udd, on the other side.